Hello, friends, and welcome into another edition of the Two Nerds of a Feather podcast. I am one half of the tag team champions of the world, Mike Mercado, and the other half is of this dynamic duo, the one, the only, Everitt O'Neal. What up, E-Train?
Not much, Michael. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I hope you are having a wonderful, safe Memorial Day weekend. Same thing to all our fans and friends listening to us. And of course, a shout out and in our memories to all those who have served and lost their lives serving this country and all those families that buried people. We love you. We're thinking of you and thank you for your sacrifice. E-Train, on today's edition of Two Nerds of a Feather podcast, the third edition of the show, we are jumping back into the sports world. I am doing a Marvel's Avenger-esque type of episode, and I needed the Thor to my Captain America or my Captain America to my Iron Man. We need to talk about what the hell is going on with fans in the stands at sporting events. That is right. It is a Two Nerds of a Feather and Sports from the Couch combo episode. So before we get crazy, and go step by step, I have notes. I got things we need to talk about. What are your first initial thoughts when I just sprung this upon you when we were doing this episode, when I brought up the turmoil that's going on between fans and players in sporting events?
Well, first of all, I will happily accept the role of Thor. He's actually my favorite Avenger.
Yeah.
I've been paying attention to what's been happening, especially at these baseball games as of late. And, when you brought up how this would be our topic, I felt it was fitting, especially after what transpired yesterday at the Celtics Nets game. And it just seems like fans have been building up, some kind of, I don't know if it's just the excitement of finally being able to, be able to see a live game and all the emotions that they've had pent up for over a year, and maybe disappointment that they've carried over from previous seasons is finally being able to manifest itself now that they're able to be back in seats. But fans are wilding out, and that's a kind way, to say what they've been doing. I mean, you got people getting dropped at Padres games. You got people throwing water bottles at fans. Like, it's going to get to a point where we might see part deux of the malice in the palace. And hashtag Ron Artest was right.
Meta World Peace was right. Hashtag let Steve Jackson get away with it. I agree with you. And we'll get into all that because there's a lot of nuance in this conversation. And I think a funny way of putting this, like, well, then some people will say ass hats coming out of the woodworks. But then there's even that conversation of people are just now coming out, or has this been something that's been going on for a long time? We're going to talk about that and so much more. And just make sure you guys give us a like, rate, review if you're checking out this podcast for the first time on youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network, and of course wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. It is our honor to be bringing you a third edition of the Two Nerds of a Feather podcast and our crossover with Sports from the Couch. So E-Train, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to give you some examples of how this broke down, okay, and different occurrences just recently, not over the years, not stuff that we've even seen in our great city, but stuff that has just recently happened. John Morant, his family was harassed in Utah. Now, we know, shout out to our fans over in Utah, we know Utah has some types of a bad rap, especially in the NBA with their fandom. It's just a culture thing. We're not here to, blame anybody, but that's just the rumbling around hashtag NBA Twitter. So it's only fair for us to bring out both sides that, yeah, there's amazing fans in Utah. It's a great arena, great home court advantage, but there's also been horror stories that we've heard, and us being Chicago Bulls fans, the Bulls winning 2 NBA championships in that city, we know there's no love lost there. That's just one example. How about Trae Young getting spit on in Madison Square Garden? To me, this is maybe the worst offense. There's nothing. You talk about I will spend time in jail, long times in jail. If I ever had somebody spit on me, I will catch a case. That is one of those I do not play scenarios. And in a basketball game, after you were the ones who said, we want Brooklyn, and now down 3-1 in the series, that's a bad scenario. How about Kyrie gets a water bottle thrown to him in Boston by some 21-year-old? Crazy to think that somebody even at that age who's still young can't think ahead of, like, the stupidity of it. Russell Westbrook gets popcorn thrown at him in Philly. And of course, here in Chicago, we've seen a bunch of fights at U.S. Cellular, or what was known as U.S. Cellular, now Guaranteed Rate Field. And, that's nothing against White Sox fans. It's just, this is all stuff that we've seen on social media over the last few weeks. So those are all the instances that we've seen in 2021. And now that restrictions are lifting, stadiums are opening up. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and break it down. You talked about pent-up frustrations or whatnot. Do you think, how much do you think the pandemic has to deal with what people are doing right now? What we're seeing from fans to players. Do you think this is something that has to deal with the pandemic, or something that I actually believe maybe more the pandemic and politics since the pandemic has occurred?
I don't like to point fingers and place blame for the behaviors of adults. But I also don't want to discount all that's happened, in the past year and a half. And while we've been quarantined, it seems like a lot of fans have been quarantining their emotion. And I feel like, these behaviors of fans, it predates the pandemic, it predates politics. I mean, there's always been these irrational fans who feel like because they paid possibly top dollar for certain seats, that gives them the autonomy, I guess, to, treat other human beings a certain kind of way. And, we like to use the excuse, well, they make 10 times more money than I did, so they should be able to handle it. And it's like, hell no. Like, I'm still a human being at the end of the day. And I'm not going to allow a water bottle to be thrown at me. I'm not going to allow popcorn to be poured onto me. And I damn sure will not allow you to spit on me just because of the amount of money I'm getting paid to entertain your entitled behinds. Spit on me, and I'm doing a charge. All right, I'm doing some time. I'm throwing away that money, and perhaps it's my own pride and dignity, but there's just some things you don't do. And for you to be probably a rational human being outside of sports, for you to just be that so caught up in your emotions over a game that you feel compelled to spit another grown human being and think there's no ramifications for that, you have a love in mind. But we've seen this behavior, like I said, like we said, during this pandemic, during this previous election cycle, where people have found this courage to say things and do things to other people. And everyone's all about the whole freedom of speech now, and like, oh, we just can't say anything. And it's like, well, you could always say stuff, but you are not free from the consequences. And so, yeah, you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, but you just got to be ready for what's going to come back your way. And so you should have known when that water bottle left your hand that you was going to get some kind of get back from it. I don't know what happened to the homie that spat on Trae Young, but I hope, and I know I shouldn't wish this, but I hope they got their issue. Because there's just some things that you don't do. Where I come from, and where you come from too, Mike, there are consequences to your choices.
And I think it's not just the entitlements. I think what a lot of people are going through right now is this brainwashing of what's right and what's wrong, what's decorum, what is something that you could say in the privacy of your house and something that you can't say in public. You mentioned it right now where it's like people want to use freedom of speech. Yeah, you do got consequences about it. But how about this? Instead of you having to be threatened with jail or bodily harm, how about you look to your left or your right? You see children there. A lot of people, the same strong arm arguments that we hear from these same people are also talking about, think of the children, while they're flipping the bird and using every cuss word at an outfielder in a baseball game or a power forward in a basketball game. See, this is the hypocrisy. Just because you paid a lot of money to go into a stadium, that's your dealing. Just like if you scuff your Jordans, you're the one who paid $200 to do it. It is not a right to go to an NFL game or an NBA game. That is a privilege. And this is a country that doesn't quite understand the difference of right and privilege. And also, I love sports. I've been about sports my whole life. It has been one of the great foundations that's let me be a decent human. Taught me a lot of lessons. But here's something. The most embarrassing thing beyond somebody making an ass out of themselves in a professional game is when you see the same thing at Little League games, except those are parents directly with their children. So we shouldn't be surprised that people want to be like Jags at a sporting event because they don't have decorum or any type of culture when they're on their own family thing. But with beyond that, I think it's up to these leagues now to work with, and this is coming from us, to work with these police departments to make sure that if it gets to these levels, you need to handle business. Because if this was on the streets, if they were doing that on the courts in Chicago, where a lot of these guys come from, or New York City, or hell, in the suburbs, you disrespect somebody, you might catch an elbow. But why? Because you think that the security guards are going to save you, or you might make, this is where I want to lead into this. The thing that upsets me, though, is a lot of these people know they're going to become famous, and they want to be that guy that gets tried. But here's the point, right? At some point, not only is one of these players going to knock somebody out, they're not going to get charged with anything. And the other person's going to get charged. So, I mean, I think the big problem is everybody wants to be famous. You and I do a podcast and are on radio, and look at us. It scratches that urge of, a little notoriety or little, be able to put on a show or performance. There's so many constructive ways to do it. I think it is one of the most embarrassing things when you see somebody try to be a part of the game by not just heckling, but by being belligerent.
I don't even know how to follow that up. I will say this, though. You were talking about in different cities where someone did a certain action that they would catch an elbow, and that might be like the kindest thing you can catch. In some cases, you might catch a bullet, all right, if you make the wrong gestures. But no, I totally agree with all of your statements that you made. And I mean, something has to change. And I mean, the fan interaction is a crucial part of games. I mean, you see how different, playoff games look when there's, an audience. The Miami Heat got swept when they were like the darlings of the playoffs during the bubble. We don't want to discount, fans and audiences, because they do matter. They can literally dictate, the environment and how games can play out. But there needs to be some regulations. And unfortunately, we shouldn't have to regulate adults. They should be able to regulate themselves. But obviously, to quote the great Western philosopher Pink, some people are a hazard to themselves.
It is true. People can't get out of their own way. And you said it beautifully. Fans are a part of the game. And as a fan, you have your part. The athlete has their parts. The referee, the PA announcer, the journalist. We are all in a symbiotic relationship with each other. Yes. That doesn't mean that we can cross lines. There's a habitual line crosser, and that's a lot of these fans. And it becomes this weird thing where it's like, I cover MMA, and I think the MMA community is wonderful, and we love our sport. But we also act like complete asshats sometimes. And I get it. You can be a meatball. Boo. Boo to your heart and your stomach and your throat, and all of it hurts. But also realize that, man, imagine if you were on a worldwide cam. Do you want to be that guy? What if your mama, and I know some people that doesn't matter, but what if your mama saw you? It's I never understand this of embarrassing yourself, because that's all you're doing. Here's the best way I could put it. No man or woman has ever wanted to sleep with somebody that acted like that at a game. Period. If that's the ultimate, right? If you're always looking for the ultimate acknowledgement, like the cool guy, I'm going to be the suave one, or you're the woman who wants to prove everybody wrong and all this, right? Nobody wants to go home with that person. Just like nobody wants to go home with the person with the annoying spoilers on their car. You're only there to impress yourself and get yourself over. And I think that really is a shame. But I do also, you and I love our beer. We'll have a beer when we're at a game. It's wonderful. I do think this country does have a problem with, and we know it just because of our diet, just excessive drinking. A lot of people don't go to just a Cubs game to just enjoy baseball. They go there to have a bunch of beer. And look, there's nothing better than a cold beer on a 90-degree July day in Chicago. But I also think there's some form of responsibility that people just don't have in this country, because liquor is such a part of sports. It's everywhere. The halftime show, the pregame, the postgame, every commercial. You see the robot with that comes for Fox, and then he has a Miller Lite in his hand. You go to the grocery store, all your favorite teams, their logo is on something. How much do you think that has to deal with where we're at is the liquor and the beer? And maybe not just that, because, again, like anything, it responsibly is awesome, but just how excessive it gets at stadiums specifically.
I mean, they call it liquid courage for a reason. And, I'm sure after a few Bud Lights that you probably overpaid for at the stadium, you'll probably be feeling a certain way if you had enough and maybe your team is down bad, that you might once again act irrationally. I mean, I don't want to get all scientific, but alcohol is a downer. It messes with your senses, and you probably might make certain choices or decisions that you probably wouldn't have made with a sober mind. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if many of the fans who have done what they've done in these past few were under the influence, but I can once again see how much the liquid courage might have played a role in you making a donkey out of yourself. And also, just to go back to what you said earlier, when we were talking about how a lot of people, fans, are going into the business of themselves. Likes and retweets are like the new currency now. We come from a world also where we're big pro wrestling fans, and you start to notice a lot of recurring fan members because they get into the business of themselves. Whether you're like Frank Clown or Brock Lesnar guy, you become known, and you become like this side act, and like people get that notoriety for that. So like sometimes it's just a combination of maybe the liquid courage and just the chance to be famous, to be known as the guy who threw the bottle at what's his name,
Kyrie Irving. Irving.
Or the dude at the San Diego Padres game who walked in who are they playing again? The Brewers or something?
Oh, I think it was the Rockies.
Yeah, the lone Padres fan walked over to what were they again?
A Rockies fan, and straight up Ivan Drago his ass.
Yeah, a sea of Rockies fans, and you had the courage to just drop somebody, and now you live in an infamy. Like sometimes it's that rush, and I'm sure the Padres fan wasn't going in there with the mindset of like, I'm going to become famous. He was probably just feeling like he needed to defend his team, which is crazy itself, that people are willing to die jail for a sports team that they do not own, amongst other things. Like,
let me tell you something, Everett. This is the last thing on my high horse. And look, I love sports. I love the city. I love pop culture. But the problem, and it is a big one, I don't know if it's just here in the great country of our United States or if it's worldwide, but identity crises right now, where people identify with anything and everything, and then they hold on to that. The fact that somebody in Boston identifies so much with the Boston Celtics that it means so much to them that Kyrie Irving may be stepping on the face in some form of disrespect is worth throwing a water bottle at him. What about the next time when it's a beer bottle or then something else, batteries? It's like, it's never just that. It always escalates. And that's the thing. Sports don't identify you. Those things don't identify. Your favorite comic book character doesn't identify you. That is part of you. It is part of your story. It is part of what you present to the world. But that in itself, that entire novel is who you are. Not who you root for, not what jersey you wear, not what opening movie you go to see, not when you decide to tweet at the favorite band or tweet down at somebody who'd like something else. That's not identifying. That's you looking for somebody to say good job or that we agree with you. That's not identifying yourself. So just because you're a big Boston Celtics fan, nobody cares. Guess what? There's a lot of Celtics fans. So instead of being part of the experience and everybody acknowledging, man, how great was that Boston crowd? We are back. We're back. Now we're looking at it and be like, what are they going to do next? What is a Philly fan going to do next? I wonder how many of these people care so much more about their families, their jobs, the economy, veterans with mental health issues, the fact that, we have so many people that aren't able to eat, that we're shutting down school. If half of you, and again, I love sports fans, but if half the people who are as passionate and identify themselves with sports logos as they did with the community, we wouldn't have as many problems. Maybe we wouldn't have as many people in stands acting like asses. That's just my opinion.
You'll get no argument from me there. Like it's weird, and I mean this isn't to discount our own fandom. Like there's times where I've been deflated after a Bears loss.
Specifically a Bears loss. Yeah.
But I don't find myself wanting to whoop on somebody.
No.
I wasn't neglecting whoever I was dating at the time because of that. Like it doesn't dictate the rest of my day. Like, yeah, it happened, but life goes on. I still got bills to pay.
Yeah, it's not like I haven't sworn in front of a kid at Wrigley. Of course I have. It's self-awareness. It's able to have a Truman Show moment and be like, look at how, if I were watching myself, is this how I want to be portrayed? Like that to me, and this is why it's so passionate of a conversation for me, because I love sports. Half the damn network is based on sports conversations. It is such a part of my life. And what's upsetting is there are times I'm at a stadium, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, what are we doing here? We're supposed to be enjoying these moments right now. And instead, this is the focal point. I do think, and this is kind of how we'll start bringing this back home, I don't want to just talk about the bad. I want to talk about solutions. I want to talk about how maybe we can fix this. And honestly, I think it's twofold. I think the fact that there's a bunch of cameras now, people are on notice, you might see this go down, because I think this has been going on forever. And if not worse, because at least people now, some people have filters before where they didn't. I think you need to and the problem is it generates so much revenue, but you got to start doing something about people tailgating and how many pre-gaming are we doing with liquor and alcohol. Look at, again, Mike Mercado is not some prude, but if we're going to have situations like that in public with 24,000 people, 60,000 people, we got to do something then. If a child does something wrong, they lose their privilege, right? And they got to earn it back. Maybe as a society, we got to start earning back some of our norms because we just don't know how to behave right now. I also do think we have to be further away from these athletes. I think, especially in the NBA, we need, and again, it's money, but we can't be so close to these people, to these guys anymore. It's a safety issue, and I do think you need to start separating them. I think there's a reason why in the NFL you don't see this. First, because they're NFL players, but second of all, there's a separation. And those are just some of my ideas. None of them are going to happen, but we need to do something.
Yeah, I just can't see it happening, because like all of that is part of experience. And there is no way to like prepare for that one fan who just takes it to the extreme. It's like, yeah, it's been amplified a bit more, these past few weeks, but I guess it's not regular enough for it to, bring that kind of regulating.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, once again, this goes back to like the days of us being pro wrestling fans. I mean, we've seen irrationality. You remember like at the peak of the NWO era, like they were out there throwing like full cups of Coca-Cola at Scott Hall's head, and he's wiping it off. Like this has been going on for decades, since we were youngsters. And even back then, I mean, even taken away from, the sports into like, entertainment, like, the old joke about like getting tomatoes thrown at you if you were a stand-up comedian.
That's so true.
Like,
yeah.
This has been going on for ages. It's part of the experience. I'm not saying it's okay, but it's not common enough for it to be to say like we have to do something.
Yeah. I think more than anything for me, it was just frustrating because I love sports and I think it's so wonderful to have fans back. I think more than anything, there should be consequences and people should be aware of them. And I think that's just it, right? It's just let there be consequences. And because fans are great. And the thing is, it's so true. It's the argument almost about anything in life. For the most part, the majority, 90 whatever percent you want to say, fans are great. You don't see these things. You shouldn't see any of it.
Yeah, you
And
shouldn't.
it's like a lot, again, like a lot of things in life. You shouldn't see any of it. But the percentages will show you that it's, it's one in however many. But the point is there shouldn't be any. And I think we will get there. There'll always be the outlier. And I do think this is also the difference. And I know some people are going to say in the comment section, I do think there's a difference between like a streaker. Like I do think there's differences in that type of shenanigans. But like that type of stuff, you can't have violence.
Yeah.
You don't put your hands on anybody else. And enjoy the damn game because sports are awesome. Wrestling is awesome. Theaters, concerts are awesome. The world is crazy enough. Let our safe havens be safe havens without us being the bags that are going to ruin it. But with that, Everitt, I think I think this was a good venting. I think this was good conversation. I think this was good to just kind of get it out. And two dudes who love sports entertainment, love all types of entertainment, are in the entertainment business. We just want to talk to our people. And there's some people who are irredeemable and they're going to do whatever they want. But for the people who are on the fence, who just aren't quite sure, like to get into the mob mentality, just be like, no, chill out. We got you. It's okay. Root and cheer and boo to your heart's desire and keep it at that.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts? What you got coming up? Are you at the radio station this coming up weekend? You and I are actually going to be recording a second episode, which would be a fourth edition of this later on in this week. But you got anything coming up that you want to promote? Your social medias and life? What the EJ got for us?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an extended weekend for us here. So I was on during Memorial Day today. So whenever this is coming out, I don't know if it'll be released today, but 1023 XLC is where I'm on normally Saturdays from 6 to midnight, Sundays 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can follow me at Instagram at Bodhi World Peace, no relation to Meta. That's BODHI World Peace. Just a quick disclaimer, like we're just two nerds, two friends, two brothers just venting. We don't think we're right at all, but we have our thoughts. And so if you are watching this and you have some kind of crazy retort, just remember Justin Fields is the quarterback of the Chicago Bears, and you're not going to talk to us any kind of way.
He's the best. Everitt O'Neill, everybody. You can follow me all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike and Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. Here on Sports from the Couch, follow us, be interactive with us. If you disagree with us, let's have a wonderful conversation. We'll talk about the comments here on all the shows at Couch Sports Talk. And of course, thank you for all of you who are joining us for the third edition of Two Nerds of a Feather podcast. We have some very fun episodes online for this show that are going to be out of the sports world, and we're going to, spread the feathers, the wings of the podcast, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We got a surprise for the next episode, so stay tuned for that, my friends. But I like Everitt said, you know me, it's the Puerto Rican blood in me. I get heated. I got hot takes. I'm a sports jock DJ, and I just wanted to let you all know I'm energetic because I love you guys and I love sports, and I just want us to all be the best humans we can be, especially if we're saying Happy Memorial Day. We're acknowledging Memorial Day. How about we actually, like, for once, mean when we say something, when we say like prayers or thoughts or let's remember, let's mean it. Let's actually start implementing it. And I think that's why I love doing this show, brother, because we could talk and feel open and know that even if people disagree with us, that it's an open, safe area for us to have constructive conversations. But with that, the one and only Everitt O'Neill, make sure you guys are supporting him and check him out on the radio box. I'm Mike Mercado. We are your tag team champions of the world and two parts of your trios champion in the entertainment world. For the one and only Everitt O'Neill, Michael Mercado, we will see you next time here on Two Nerds with Feather podcast.